Today, Elgato, now owned by Corsair, for those of you confused why the Amazon pages sometimes show Corsair, it's still the same products, announced and released their second 4K capture card into the wild. Sadly, it's not a USB capture device. Instead, we get the Elgato 4K 60 Pro Mark II. Well, it's just the 4K 60 Pro since it's replacing the original, but I'll be referring to it here as the Mark II just to avoid confusion. This is a pretty major update to the original 4K 60 Pro device that both makes it more capable and shrinks it down substantially, and is finally competitive to AverMedia's Live Camera 4K that's been stomping the floor with them since release. Plus, it packs a secret trick that no other capture card seems to have thus far, and it's pretty nice. I'm EposVox, here to make tech easier and more fun, the Stream Professor, as some have started saying, and this is the Elgato 4K 60 Pro Mark II. This is a HDMI capture card capable of pulling in your cameras, game consoles, or gaming PCs and recording or streaming them. This is great for capturing or streaming your PS4 Pro or Xbox One X or in a 2-PC capture setup. But this does not benefit a single PC streaming setup. Normal OBS works fine there. There is no advantages here. And there's plenty of cheaper capture cards available if you're on a Nintendo Switch or older 1080p only consoles. The original 4K 60 Pro launched nearly 2 years ago for an asking price of $400 and was met with some skepticism of the price, but mostly great applause. It was the first 4K 60 FPS gaming capture card after all, and the most affordable, with competing options on the professional side from the likes of Magewell costing $800 or more. Also, this was the first time that a high refresh rate PC capture was made available to gamer capture cards. However, about 7 months later, AverMedia released their new wave of capture cards, 3 of which could at least pass through 4K 60 FPS, and their flagship not only capturing it, but also capturing or tone mapping HDR, something Elgato couldn't do. The worst part, it was $100 cheaper. And it had a few other features that Elgato's offering lacked. Between that and the 4K pass-through capable USB cards, which Elgato has yet to produce, it seems like AverMedia was very much winning the capture card wars for the past year or so. So it's nice to see Elgato finally catch up, and at a cheaper price tag than what AverMedia is offering. $250 US is what Elgato wants from you for their new 4K 60 HDR 1440p 144 1080p 240 capture card. And it's hard to argue that it's not worth it. But as usual with Elgato, they're mostly held back by their software, though in ways that maybe most users won't care about. Full disclosure time, as always, this product was sent for review by Elgato. Neither Elgato nor Corsair are paying for this review, telling me what to say, nor seeing it before it is posted. Elgato has purchased advertising on my channel in the past, but not related to this device, and in no way has an impact on this review. Video description will contain Amazon affiliate links, which give a small kickback to the channel at no extra cost to you. While the devices come with less than ideal software, the hardware, however, is rock solid. They took what was once a big beefy boy, which they even had to add a support piece for when it was used in X16 size PCIe slots for, and shrunk it down to perfectly fit in the exact size and shroud of their older HD60 Pro. It's still PCIe 4X, of course, but much smaller overall. This comes with the added benefit of supporting small form factor PC builds again, and the bracket is included in the box, along with an HDMI cable and a case badge. This does come at the cost of a backplate on the card, which personally I couldn't really care less about, but I received a ridiculous amount of comments from people saying that they outright would not buy the Live Gamer 4K due to it not having one, and no LED lighting like the 4K 60 Pro original has. Oh well. Unfortunately, there's also no heatsink. You may remember that the original 4K 60 Pro got stupidly hot in use. Well, I'm told that this is because the new FPGA on the card, specifically the SmartVideo 1917 or P2140 from Yuan, runs much cooler and doesn't need it. It's also what we owe the new HDR and tone mapping functionality to as well. In researching this, I also realized that the upgrade is so significant, especially in terms of cooling, because the 4K 60 Pro literally has 4 of the HD 60 Pro's FPGA chips on board, with another chip stitching them together. Oh Elgato, the cost of being first. For those asking why they didn't just fix it with software updates instead of a full re-release, this is why. The hardware needed some tweaking. Either way, everything is nice and black and sleek, and I appreciate the build here, even if the shroud feels like it's just a heating coil for my GPU's TDP. You're looking at a HDMI 2.0 input and output, but no analog audio support or DisplayPort or anything like that. I've actually asked Elgato a couple times if they'd consider making a DisplayPort capable capture card, and they said that it's basically not even considered an option for them due to the cost of manufacturing. I need to go on and talk about this before this video goes any further. Elgato have done something with the drivers of this capture card, which seem to work plug and play, by the way, that I've not seen done in any other video device in Windows pretty much ever. The 4K60 Pro Mark II can output its video stream to 2 programs at once. Yes, really. The driver is magic.
To the novice, I'm sure it all seems like magic, but... oh, all right. It's magic.
This means that you can record your raw gameplay without overlays in the 4K capture utility and still stream a lower resolution copy with overlays in OBS. Now, Elgato previously implemented this as a bonus feature to their 4K capture utility by means of Streamlink. That option used the NDI network streaming protocol to loop video in your PC and then be pulled into OBS. This is different. This is happening in the driver. None of that nonsense. It is just like magic. This way you don't deal with any of the delay or weirdness that could happen with the Streamlink beta. While it's not something I would use a whole lot at this point in my career, I've run into plenty of headache with devices only being accessible in one program and getting blocked out by another, and I get requests on how to work around this all the time. So honestly, for some creators, this may be the sole selling point for this capture card that they need to make the decision and open up their wallets. As mentioned, this new capture card is capable of great things, though most of it will be familiar. The 4K60 Pro can pass through 1080p up to 240Hz, 1440p up to 144Hz, and 4K ultra high definition up to 60Hz, as well as HDR10. You can pass through 4K and capture or stream in 1080p or 720p. You can pass through 1440p 144 FPS or 120 FPS and stream 720p 60 FPS or any combination you like. I don't currently have the ability to test an ultra-wide, someone please send me ultra-wide monitors, but typically the support here is up to 3440 by 1440 around 100 Hz. This is what it supports, but I don't have the monitor to test, variances of that at the moment. This makes it great to go on your streaming PC in a dual PC streaming setup or to capture your 4K HDR consoles. Again, this does not benefit a single PC streaming setup in any way. Please do not waste your money and then ask me how to make it improve your stream performance. It can't. Unfortunately, this capture card still only operates in the 420 color space, so while XRGB and YUY2 are exposed as emulated options for the driver in OBS, you should only be selecting NV12 or YV12. XRGB will add more system load and make your image more punchy for no reason. Now, this doesn't matter to many people, and honestly, by the time your stream hits Twitch or Mixer, it may not matter. But the reason that it matters to me is due to the way that text is rendered for PC input. Lower color resolution, such as 420, can generally make your image feel softer, but also text and fine details from sources like PC inputs can exhibit color fringing, where the green and red around the text kind of halos. This is frustrating and potentially even harder for the encoder to compress for low bitrate streams, but not necessarily noticeable in the final stream to most people. But it bothers me, and I mean, garbage in, garbage out, right? Plus, the LiveGamer 4K operates in 444 RGB, so why not? However, the lag-free pass-through is still 444 RGB. This is super important so that your view of the game or screen isn't compromised. Older Elgato cards like the HD60 Pro did not have this, and so using them with a PC was a frustrating experience if you could notice the issue. Speaking of things that will mainly just annoy me, the 4K60 Pro Mark II does not play nicely with 4x3 PC resolutions. I was using the LiveGamer 4K to run Ion Fury at 1024 by 768, 120Hz to a CRT, which worked fine. The 4K60 Pro, however, kept forcing it to 1080p at times or stretching it to widescreen and weirdly cutting off part of the image by the time I got converted to my CRT. There's many quirks along the way in this setup that may have affected it, but it's still frustrating to run into when it worked fine with AverMedia's option. So, know that. I cover more retro use cases later in the video. 1080i does work, though the deinterlacing in 4K capture utility feels a little blurry, but it is supported. Adaptive sync, such as FreeSync or NVIDIA's G-Sync, is not supported, period. Lastly, we have input latency. I measured an average of 58 milliseconds to an OBS full screen preview with the 4K60 Pro Mark II. Having the stream sent to both the 4K capture utility and OBS did not seem to impact this number. That puts the 4K60 Pro Mark II significantly faster than the original 4K60 Pro, but not the fastest card that I've tested, even from Elgato. It is more than good enough though. But again, I must remind people that this is not fast enough to play from the preview in Windows. You still need a monitor connected to the output pass-through, or you're probably going to have a bad time in most games. Also, just to mention it, since their old devices confuse people, there isn't a max bitrate for the capture card. There hasn't been such a thing since the original HD60 in 2012 or 2013. The HD60S and newer devices send an uncompressed signal to your PC, and the only bitrate limitation is what their software caps at. In OBS, you can go way higher or record full ProRes with the FFmpeg plugin from Zaymar if you're crazy like me and have a 16+ core CPU. Before I tell you how to set this up, you gotta listen to the required system specs. This capture card requires Windows 10, 64-bit or newer. Obviously, Windows 10 is the newest at the moment. No Mac support is listed as of yet, and as usual, no Linux support at all. You need a minimum of an Intel Core i7 from the 6th gen, so something like a 6700K, or an AMD Ryzen 7 or newer CPU. You also need a 10 series NVIDIA GeForce card or newer. Yes, 20 series in the 1660 and 1660 Ti will work, the 1650 will not. No AMD GPU support is listed for now, and if you plan on doing anything above 1080p 60, you will absolutely need the 10 series GPU encoding capabilities, or 20 series. It is a requirement. You also can only install this in a desktop PC with an available PCIe X4 slot or larger slot available. This isn't an X1 card like the HD60 Pro, you need a full X4, X8, or X16 slot available. Theoretically, you could hook this up to a laptop with a Thunderbolt 3 enclosure and things like that, but again, haven't had a chance for someone to send me one yet for me to test out for myself. It has been a fun project that I've wanted to do. And yes, you really do need those specs. This is a high-end capture card that requires high-end hardware to run. Capturing 4K 60 or HDR or 1440p 120 is no joke. Part of me wants to say that I'd like to see AMD Navi support listed, but given the encoder troubles that I've had in previous videos on those cards, I'm just not. Turn off your PC, install the 4K 60 Pro in an available X4 or larger size PCIe slot, hook up the HDMI in cable to your video source, say PS4 Pro, Xbox One X, or secondary PC. Hook up the HDMI out cable to your monitor you wish to game on. Again, you can't game from the preview in Windows here. It will not be a fun experience. If you're using a dual PC setup, you can use display cloning if your monitor does not support HDMI 2.0, though the experience with how Windows cooperates with this can vary wildly. I have a full video showing how to set that up linked in the video description. Down there. Turn your PC back on and go to Elgato's website linked in the video description and download and install the 4K Capture utility. Maybe reboot after this just to be safe. Open 4K Capture utility, make sure your 4K 60 Pro Mark II is selected in the device tab and you're good to go. In OBS, add a new video source, choose the Elgato 4K 60 Pro Mark II, and you're good to go. If you mess with advanced settings, I recommend sticking with NV12 as a video format, as that's what this card operates at, leaving your consoles, OBS, and this card set to limited or partial color range and Rec 709. Make sure this matches your advanced setting tab in OBS as well. Set audio buffering to off. The weakest part of Elgato's new 4K 60 Pro is the software. This has been the case with their devices for a while now. The 4K Capture utility is pretty Spartan in terms of features and not very reliable. I've had many instances of recordings just not saving when they were supposed to, or weird performance issues that aren't reported by the software, audio desync, a problem with Elgato's software since their very first gaming device, and so on. While they have added some neat updates over time, key updates being the stream link to allow you to send your video feed to OBS to record in both programs at once with the older devices, though that's not, that's only needed for a very specific use case with the new card, which I'll cover in a bit, and live commentary, which they just added recently. I have a whole video covering both of these features linked below. This has been frustrating to see, as they clearly need to keep investing in the software so that buyers can have something more simple and user-friendly to use versus OBS, and I'm always an advocate of this. But their previous Game Capture HD app had many more features and capabilities than their new app has been given. And on the competition side, AverMedia's RE Central has gone from a dump that I wouldn't recommend to anyone back in 2015 to a really kick-ass recording and streaming software with most of the features of OBS. It's actually pretty reliable, even if the record and toggle buttons can be a little sluggish at times. All that aside, let's take a walkthrough of the software for a moment. Opening Elgato's 4K capture utility greets you with a big preview window from your device, a record button and timer at the bottom, and a couple periphery controls on the corners. Bottom left gives you control to name your recording, select a game name, and add tags. This affects both the folders in Windows Explorer that it sorts your actual recordings into, and the library organization tab. Bottom right gives you a screenshot button, audio meters, and mute buttons for the monitoring preview of your game sound and your microphone. Generally keep those muted, you don't want those looping back to you twice through your headphones. Top right gives you a free space indicator for your target record drive and a settings cog. Click that. Here you have many settings. In general, you can check for software updates, always make sure you're updated, and enable that Streamlink NDI functionality I mentioned before, and choose which resolution it sends to OBS at. The Device tab lets you choose a capture device to manage if you have multiple Elgato devices connected to one PC. Change the HDMI color range. I recommend leaving this on bypass. You can view your video input signal to make sure it's being detected properly as well. Input EDID mode basically tells the device you're connected to either read the supported resolutions and frame rates from your monitor or from the capture card itself. I usually use display so it reads my monitor properly. If you set the input EDID mode to internal, you can also choose from a couple specific resolution modes, useful for getting ultra wide to work, or input your own custom EDID file, though I've yet to find a decent way to actually make these. The workflow's never made sense to me. In the Picture tab, you can customize how your video feed looks with basic brightness, contrast, saturation, and hue shift controls. I generally recommend leaving those alone. If your image looks too punchy or too washed out, it means your HDMI color range settings between your console and device are mismatched, and you should fix those instead of trying to compensate with post-processing. But the options are available to you. The Recording tab has a lot of information. First, you can set where your recordings and screenshots are saved to. Next, you can choose which encoder the software uses, either NVENC on an NVIDIA graphics card, which I've covered thoroughly on the channel, or software CPU encoding. Even on my 18-core 36-thread i9 CPU, encoding 4K 60 in software mode is not a good time. You really need a 10 series or newer NVIDIA GPU for this to work. Next, you're presented with a checkbox to enable HDR recording. With this checked and HDR gameplay being fed into the card, software is recording the HDR footage to HEVC. With this unchecked, it's still passing through the HDR, but it's tone mapping down to SDR in the recording. This is a really cool capability and is more than just fine for people who just want to, play in HDR on their TV and stream normally. If you hold the control key when you open the settings menu, you do also have the option of choosing whether the tone mapping is done on the software, which is the default, or on the device itself. I haven't really found a downside to tone mapping on the hardware, so I have that enabled so it just uses less resources. Below the HDR recording checkbox, you have resolution and frame rate video formats that you can choose to record to, the bitrate of your recording, which limits based on the scale of, what resolution you're recording to, and a preview of what your output file would look like specs-wise. Next, you have the option of reducing the frame rate of your video preview in the software while you're recording. This helps reduce the overall system load to help keep recording performance up, but it can be distracting to some people while they're playing. Lastly, you have the option of enabling flashback recording. This keeps a recording buffer going, up to 2 hours worth, that you can then go back and select when you want the recording to be saved from, instead of just recording live. This is useful for multiplayer gameplay sessions and recordings where you don't want to have to manually record every single match and then manage those files and delete the bad ones or whatever. You can simply go back to save, say, the last 5 minutes of gameplay of a good match instead. This has been a key selling point of Elgato's hardware since the original Game Capture HD. And then there's the mic tab, where you can select your microphone and set levels for the live commentary feature, downmix it to mono, and things like that. I cover all of that in its own video, linked below. Also in the software, you have the library tab, which you can use to view, preview, export, and manage all of your video recordings. Personally, I just use the actual Windows Explorer file folders for this, but you do have the option to have some smart tagging and sorting and things like that. So if you do a lot of recording, this can help you stay organized. Now, there's an elephant in the room that I'm always just so happy to see comments about. Is 4K worth it? Why even record 4K at all? 4K is pointless. Like it or not, the standards for TV and content are moving to UHD 4K more and more, so it would be foolish of Elgato and competition to not support it for capture. While there are very few people who will be streaming 4K live anytime soon, 4K YouTube videos are very mainstream these days. The higher bitrate offered by YouTube's 4K transcodes bypasses a lot of the quality issues that come up with their 1080p videos, and even upscaling 1080p or 1440p to 4K for videos, if you record at a high enough source quality, can be beneficial. But 4K isn't worth it for everyone. For some, it's not worth investing in on the TV side, console side, graphics power side, any of it. That's cool. Don't buy this. While recording and editing and exporting 4K is quite resource intensive and takes some serious computing horsepower, capture cards like this are still great for people who want to play on their 4K TVs or high refresh rate PC monitors and just stream normal 720p or 1080p 60. This is now the most affordable option that still supports actual 4K capture for future-proofing, quote unquote, for such setups. Pretty good choice. While I operate everything I can these days at 4K, HDR on the other hand has not been quite as worth it for me. Gaming and watching movies in HDR is cool when I can do it, but trying to make HDR content is super messy and capturing it for gameplay is a bit of a headache. But the fact that the 4K 60 Pro Mark II can tone map HDR to SDR like the LiveGamer 4K before it is great and much more worth it so that you can still play in HDR and record in SDR. Especially with the, option to tone map on hardware that this capture card has that I talked about earlier. When it comes to OBS, I have mixed news. If the 4K capture utility is closed, the HDR feed is also tone mapped to OBS too, so no work required. But if the 4K capture utility is open and you're capturing HDR, then the feed is not tone mapped in OBS, since the device is set to operate in HDR mode, and you'll have to use the StreamLink NDI feed to access the tone mapped copy of the feed on OBS. But if you're not capturing HDR at all and just passing it through, you'd have nothing to worry about. Capturing HDR is where I ran into some serious issues with Elgato's software. At higher bit rates, the recording gets completely choppy and just can't keep up. Lowering the resolution or bitrate helps, but it can still get all stuttery and freak out at random even if it seems like it's going well. The software doesn't report any of these as issues. 4K 60R is incredibly intensive, which is why there's high GPU requirements for encoding it, but I'm on a 1080 Ti, which should handle it, and I'm able to record 4K 60 HDR in AverMedia's Rec Central software all day with no issues, and even at double the bitrate. I've confirmed that Elgato engineers were able to replicate this issue on similar hardware to me and are working on fixing it, so hopefully it'll be fixed by the time these end up in users' hands. But again, few people are actually going to be using this feature, so the impact is minimal overall. I just wanted to talk about it. I also had an issue where one of my test HDR recordings was just outright rejected by YouTube, but who knows why that happened. Playing HDR files, of course, requires an HDR-capable monitor. 3 software programs are recommended by me. VLC, which will play HDR with no problems if your monitor is set to HDR mode, PotPlayer with the MadVR renderer, or MPC-HC, which is a little older, not super, it's not maintained anymore, at least this fork of it, but it will automatically kick your monitor over to HDR mode when playing HDR files and back to SDR when closed. I like this a lot, as having to switch the Windows setting constantly is very annoying. If you upload your clips to YouTube, your PC must have HDR mode on when you go to view them, and then when you click on the video page, Chrome will give you HDR options for the video. Yes, even 144p HDR is a thing. Weird. If you just view the video with HDR off, it will present you with the SDR tone mapped version that everyone else sees. I will have samples linked in the video description. Editing HDR is also a complicated mess at the moment. In Blackmagic's DaVinci Resolve, it's actually fairly simple. Set up your timeline resolution and frame rate as desired, then go to the color management section of your project settings and set the project to Rec 2020 scene or Rec 2100 ST 2084 scene and enable mastering for 1000 nits. Drag in your HDR footage, edit as usual. Of course, you can't utilize normal SDR assets or they won't look quite right here. And then when you're ready to render your footage, Resolve's Export Advanced settings will give you options to embed the HDR metadata in the file. Check that and render. I recommend using DNxHR, HQX 10-bit, or HEVC, but H.264 will technically work here. Premiere, on the other hand, I'm honestly just not 100% sure on how to make this work. There doesn't seem to be any explicit setting to make your project be in HDR mode, but if you do use Lumetri color effects, you do need to set that to HDR mode. Then in your H.264 export settings, change the profile from main or high to high 10 and check color 2020 color primaries. and it should work according to the guides that I have found. But I have had limited success getting this working. The results don't seem quite right, and honestly, it just hasn't been worth messing with. I also wanted to note some retro gaming related tests real quick here that people always request. The open source scan converter works with the 4K 60 Pro Mark II up to 4x mode from the Super Nintendo. At 5x, it just kind of freaks out. The Eon Super 64 seems to work fine. And the GBA Consolizer works, but not with the DVI Plus audio mode. Even my fancy Magewell card isn't cooperating with that mode, however. So, what is the new 4K 60 Pro competing with? AverMedia has many 4K adjacent capture solutions. The direct competitor, of course, that a lot of people ask me for this comparison with is the LiveGamer 4K, which does everything the 4K 60 Pro Mark II does, though it's bigger, it has RGB lighting, and it operates in the 444 RGB color space. And it usually costs $50 more, though the OG 4K 60 Pro and this card have been battling in sale discounts for a year now. AverMedia also offers a few USB options that do 4K pass-through. The LiveGamer Ultra can capture up to 4K 30 while passing through 4K 60, and can even capture HDR at 1080p 60 from the 4K signal. And it supports high refresh rate PC modes as well, though not as many as the PCIe option. The LiveGamer Extreme 2 and the LiveGamer Portable 2 Plus both support 4K pass-through, but no HDR support at all, and no PC modes are supported, and they only capture up to 1080p 60. Razer recently released their Ripsaw HD capture card, which again, passes through 4K, captures 1080p 60, and no HDR or PC modes are supported. Same with the Pingo HDMI grabber I reviewed earlier in the year. Lastly, Magewell has both a PCIe and USB capture card that does most of what Elgato's capture card does, and more, but they cost $800 to $900 each and are not very accessible for game streaming purposes. Over the past year, I've been flooded with questions, both on Twitter at twitter.com/eposvox and in our Discord server at eposvox.com/discord, both of which you should join, by the way, asking whether you should buy the LiveGamer 4K or the 4K 60 Pro. And while I try to not express any sort of brand loyalty, it's been very difficult to recommend the original 4K 60 Pro over the LiveGamer 4K. It just makes more sense for people to go with the cheaper and better option. The 4K 60 Pro was a less featureful card and had plenty of issues, and AverMedia's card was $100 cheaper, base price. But Elgato has hit back, making their new 4K 60 Pro a strong recommendation. The only real thing that this card can't do is some of the new crazy non-standard ultra-wide modes like over 100 Hz at 3440 by 1440 or the weird 5K ultra-wide stuff. But it's smaller, it's sleeker, and it does more than its predecessor, and they just need to get the software to catch up. I had originally planned on doing this entire video all the way in HDR for kicks, but it would have made the screen capture look weird, and anyway, my HDR capable camera is back with the manufacturer for an RMA. It's funny, my original review of the first 4K 60 Pro in 2017 was shot on my crappy T3i because my G7 was being RMA'd, and now I review the Mark II, and the same thing happens, but at least I have a better backup camera this time. Oh well. If you want to buy the 4K 60 Pro Mark II for yourself, I'll have Amazon affiliate links in the description down below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed this review, subscribe for more tech education, consider joining the Inner Circle over on Floatplane to get early access to videos, behind the scenes content, and a special chat room in our Discord server. I already said I'm EposVox, I'll see you next time. Wait, what? Well,